Trying to make sure that angle is right. I don't know if I got it, but if you're sitting like this, then you know I didn't get it right. I'm not a very good camera operator, but I do the best I can. So I've got some great things to share today. I'm glad you've joined me for another edition of Pastor Bob's Coffee Break. Coffee gets me started, God keeps me going. The truth is, God gets me started and keeps me going. Coffee just helps me wake up a little bit. There you go. So, this podcast really is a labor of love for me, and my life is very busy, and there's a lot of people coming and going, and I have a lot on my plate. So I get up at 3 o'clock in the morning and go through the Word and study and see what God puts on my heart for the study, and then usually by 7 I have it posted and I'm on to my other responsibilities, for the day, and that's what my day looks like. So a little bit of coffee in the morning does help a little bit. So I have titled this podcast, Shut Up and Listen. There's a reason for that. Here's the question. Dear Pastor Bob, I have a lot of bad feelings for my best friend. She never lets me talk. Every time I try to tell her what's going on in my life, she interrupts me and talks about herself. And if I try to keep talking, she just talks louder. She doesn't listen to me. I have so many friends like this. And if you're watching, you may be one of them. Yeah. Listening is a skill. It really is. And I haven't always been very good at it. And I suspect that there are probably still some times when I'm not great at it. But the Bible has a lot to say about this. And let's just jump in. And the obvious place to start is James chapter 1. And verse 19. It says, understand this, my dearly loved brothers and sisters. Let every man be quick to hear, a ready listener, slow to speak, and slow to take offense and to get angry. Better listener, slow to speak, slow to get angry and to take offense. For man's anger does not promote the righteousness God wishes and requires. So get rid of all uncleanness, and the rampant outgrowth of wickedness, and in a humble, gentle, modest spirit, receive and welcome the word which, implanted and rooted in your hearts, contains the power to save your souls. It's a lot of power. Every once in a while, I read to you from the Message. It's called the Message Bible. It's really a commentary from a guy that I respect a lot, Eugene Peterson. And here's what he says about this one. This is kind of in his own words. It's not a translation, it's a paraphrase. He says, but post this at the intersections, dear friends. I love that. This should be at the intersections. When you drive down the road, this should be a sign. Lead with your ears, follow with your tongue, and let anger straddle along in the rear. I like that. God's righteousness doesn't grow from human anger, so throw all spoiled virtues and cancerous evil in the garbage. In simple humility, let our gardener, God, landscape you with the word, making a salvation garden of your life. I like that. But my favorite part is there should be this sign at the intersections that said, lead with your ears, follow with your tongue, kick anger out to the rear. That's good, isn't it? Okay, I got that. Good words to live by. But it says quick to listen. Quick to listen. You know, we're usually quick to speak. But quick to listen involves a little bit of training. It means that we train ourselves to wait for the whole story before we dive in with our opinion. We are quick to listen to what somebody else has to say on our hearts before we dive in with our own version and our own stories. I have friends that I know whatever I have to say, they're going to either try to top it or give me their own stories. And when I watch their faces, I know they're just being kind to listen to me continue to talk, but their wheels are turning and they're not really listening. They're thinking about what they're about to say and the story they want to tell you about themselves. And I have a few friends like that who don't listen. They just want to talk. And they just want to one-up you. They just want to tell a better story. They just want to tell another story. They just really want to talk about themselves. Not good listeners. And then it says slow to speak. And that's the other side of listening, isn't it? You know, we control our words and don't blurt out everything that comes into our heads. We don't have to say everything that's there. And, you know, when I listen to people, their stories remind me of all kinds of my own stories. Do I need to tell them? No. Because I really don't need to just listen to me, and I already know the stories. And sometimes I need to step back and say, what's the most important thing for this person to hear from me? And usually it's not my own stories. It's simply listening. You know, counseling is an interesting thing, and I've had people that have come in to talk to me and to talk about their problems, and they sit and they talk and they talk and they talk and they get it all out, and as they're getting out, the answers start to become obvious to them, and they start talking about the answers, and at the very end they thanked me so much for helping them, and I'm thinking, you know, I didn't say anything. I didn't get a word in there. But sometimes people just need to get it out and to talk it through. And if I interrupt all the time, I stopped that process from happening. Slow to speak, quick to listen. You know, James goes on and talks about the tongue, and reading this whole chapter of James chapter 1 would be a great idea when you have a moment. It's a great chapter. But in James 1:26, he says, if anyone thinks himself to be righteous, piously observant of the external duties of his faith, and does not bridle his tongue, but deludes his own heart, this person's religious service is worthless, futile, barren. Man, this really describes so many people, and it kind of describes the internet, doesn't it? There's so many people that just talk and talk, and they want themselves to be heard, and they're always showing, well, sometimes their foolishness. They're not listeners, they're talkers. And he warns us even later in chapter 3 about controlling our tongues. James 3:5 starts out by saying, in the same way, the tongue is a small thing that makes grand speeches. This little thing can get us into a lot of trouble. But a tiny spark can set a great forest on fire. And among all the parts of the body, the tongue is a flame of fire. It's a whole world of wickedness, corrupting our entire body. It can set your whole life on fire, for it is set on fire by hell itself. Yikes. So it's serious. What comes out of your mouth is serious. Well, our mouths get us into a lot of trouble, don't they? We can profess to believe something in particular, but we're betrayed by what comes out of our mouths many times. What you live is what you believe, not what you say. You know? And then I want to go back to the Message again. And again, people write and say, you shouldn't use the Message. It's not a translation. No, it's not. In fact, it's called the Message Bible, and I wouldn't even call it a Bible necessarily. It's one man's commentary, but he does a great job. In Matthew 12, verse 34, he starts by saying, you have minds like a snake pit. How do you suppose that what you say is worth anything when you're so foul-minded? It's your heart, not the dictionary, that gives meanings to your words. Don't you love that? A good person produces good deeds and words season after season. He's consistent because what comes from his heart is sincere, and it's good. Well, we'll get to that in a minute. An evil person is a blight on the orchard. Let me tell you something. Every one of these careless words is going to come back to haunt you. There will be a time of reckoning. What you say comes back and, well, kind of kicks you in the butt. It always does. So it says words are powerful. Take them seriously. Words can be your salvation. Words can also be your damnation. Matthew 12, 34 to 37 from the Message. So when we discipline ourselves to listen more than we talk, we actually start to learn a lot. And when we are simply listening to someone else and in our minds we're thinking what we're going to say next, we don't learn anything. Big talkers are hard to teach, almost impossible to teach. I have friends like this. Impossible to teach because they're always talking. They're always one-upping you. Every time you say something, they've got to say something about themselves in the same respect, and they just talk about themselves. They think they already know everything there is to know, and they're constantly expressing their opinions. Again, we just described the internet, didn't we? But wise people have learned that more wisdom can be gained by listening, by observing, by watching, by not rushing to judgment, but taking some time. Proverbs 10:19 says, too much talk leads to sin. Be sensible and keep your mouth shut. I like that. Proverbs 10:19. You know, there's an old saying that said it's better to remain silent and be thought of fool than to open one's mouth and to remove all doubt. You know, you think about this, how many mistakes could have been avoided if we just shut up? If we just weren't so quick to speak? And how many relationships could have been saved if we just shut up? Just shut up. Just listen. How many mistakes could have been avoided if we just listened instead of talked? You know, we should be careful about the kinds of people we spend a lot of time with too, and a lot of time listening to. And if you are one of those people that like to listen to yourself, shut up a little more. Be quiet a little more. Listen a little more. And when you feel like compelled to talk, like they say, zip it and listen. You know, there are people we should listen to, older people, you know, because of their experience. And a lot of times an older person has been through exactly what you're going through and has some wisdom because of it, which leads to the next person, wise people, because they have good advice. Godly people, because they can represent God's perspective on your situation. They're people you should listen to. And a lot of times you don't grow in your faith and you don't move out of your situation because you simply don't listen. Most of us, it doesn't come naturally to. Most of us don't naturally become quick to listen. But we can train ourselves to become better listeners than we are. Good listening is active. It engages with the speaker. It validates the perspective, even if we disagree. And when people feel heard, they're more willing to listen to what you have to say. They're more willing to listen to your side of something. They're more willing to engage with you. So, being quick to listen actually opens the door for greater communication because listening shows respect. And folks, when people feel respected, when they feel like you actually care about them enough to hear what they have to say, they're more likely to return that respect and to listen to you. So it's important to be quick to listen, slow to speak. And God's word always shows us the best way. And when we follow it, again, we're blessed. So my strongest advice today is shut up. Shut up and listen. But be a better listener, and be a listener to those people around you who really need someone to listen to them. Be that person. And in the process, you just might learn something too. You are blessed. Now go and be a blessing.